right then, it is 6:07, December 14th, 2021, and I'm calling this meeting to order. We have all commissioners in attendance minus Kevin Garrison, and you all heard talk to you all. And with that, additions and modifications to the agenda. I have one modification to the agenda, and that is to make agenda item 5.01 de-escalation discussion. I want to make that time certain for immediately after we approve the minutes from our last meetings, and that is just because we have Mr. Goldman speaking us with that, and his time is valuable. We just want to make sure that we get him in, and then we'll have a public forum directly afterwards. Do I have a second for that, or first? I forget.
Yep, second.
All right. Any discussion over this?
No.
And okay, sounds good. And just to clarify too, the screen for you guys in person is very small, so I cannot see if you raise your hand or not. So just please, if you have something to say, just go right ahead. All right. So with that, I had a second. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I believe that passes unanimously. And next agenda item is approving the minutes from 10/26/21, 11/1/21, and 11/2/21. I motion that we approve all the minutes from the last three meetings. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Milo. Any discussion?
No.
Not seeing any. All in favor of approving the minutes from the last three meetings, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. And with that, we move on to the amended agenda, which is the de-escalation discussion. And with that, Mr. Goldman, you have the floor.
Great. So I have to apologize because I didn't give Chief much notice after November was, we didn't do the November meeting. But Chief, did you want to start and then bring in Eric?
Yes, thank you so much. So first of all, thank you very much for asking us to do this and talk about this important topic. Second of all, thanks so much to Eric for agreeing to join us on this. As we hear what Eric has to say about his very unique experience being someone who had de-escalation training and experience with Howard Center as a street outreach worker, and then also has just recently gone through a version of our de-escalation training as a new community support liaison, as a new CSL. I'd like to explain a little bit about that de-escalation training as officers experience it. It is a fuller program than what Eric went through. And I have here a note from Sergeant Beliveau, whom you all met when he came and talked about narcotics with us. He wanted to make sure that the police commission is aware of the difference between what I think Eric's going to describe, which is very important, and what the officers get to do. And he also wanted to make very clear that he and the lead ICAT instructors have volunteered to put on a full day training for the police commission. And if that's something that you and the police commission would like to see happen, he'd be happy to make those arrangements. ICAT is a full day. It stands for Integrated Communication Assessment and Tactics. It is a program that was developed by the Police Executive Research Forum, or PERF. This agency was one of the pioneers of it, worked on the very earliest forms of the training program with PERF. PERF sent a number of officers first to a large conference on the East Coast, led primarily by the New York City Police Department's ESU and other entities. Pardon me about that, the radio. And then also did a visit to the UK where they really wanted to examine why it was that unarmed officers in the United Kingdom, when faced with perpetrators armed with knives, were not shooting them. I mean, the first answer is that the police are unarmed. The second answer is, how are they doing that? And so ICAT was designed to deal with primarily individuals who are either barricaded in a situation that does not involve a hostage and or firearm, and or designed to deal with people who are armed with knives, not with firearms, and may be out in the open. And how do you communicate with these? How do you tactically approach them? How do you do that in a way that is safe for everyone involved? ICAT instruction as practiced by the BPD, and the BPD have certified instructors in it that are certified through PERF after co-designing it with PERF and other agencies. But after being on the ground floor, as it were, of the training regime, we also brought in PERF instructors at a later point and paid them, along with South Burlington, to train the trainer programming here in Chittenden County. And we invited a lot of other agencies, the VSP, Williston, Colchester, to that training session so that we could all be on the same page. And this was a time when we were really hoping, for example, that our emergency response vehicle, or ERV, which is built along the idea of servicing the ICAT training model, would be something that would ultimately be a template for the rest of the county. There were times where we envisioned being able to take that ARV and actually build other ones for other entities in the county. Whether South Burlington had the volume to need one all on its own or not was a question, but perhaps the county would have had one, Burlington would have had one, and they would have been able to co-deploy or deploy together. We were, for a time period, going to a lot of calls for service outside of Burlington with that ERV and using those ICAT training tactics. And as a result, the idea of having the county trained in a similar way was really important. We're less able to do that now, obviously, although even recently, about a month and a half ago, we were in Winooski for a call with that ERV. So ICAT, the version that we train, includes 7 modules. There's an introduction, and these are very long PowerPoints, and then they are anchored by the most important component, which is scenario-based training to go with that, those PowerPoints. The introduction is 13 slides. The second component is a critical decision-making model, which is 24 slides. There's a crisis recognition and response model, 27 slides. A tactical communications section on 21 slides. Operational safety tactics, 22 slides. Integration of crisis recognition, response, communications, and tactics, 11 slides. And then a page that is unique to the Burlington Police Department, an operational safety and tactics by our standards, which is another 8 slides. And I say all that not to list off the numbers, but simply to say that as important as what Eric's going to share with us, it is a very, very big, comprehensive kind of thing. And even what Commissioner Hart and I were thinking about doing was not going to really touch on this. This is an all-day process when officers go through it. Our ERU does it at least once a year and trains on it. It is also incorporated into other kinds of training, whether we're talking about patrol procedures training around our usage of CEWs or constructed electrical weapons, training around firearms and tactics. All of that ends up having pieces of ICAT inside of it. And so it's a very integral part of the way in which the agency trains. So with all that as a long-winded introduction, I'd turn it over to your invited guest and let you hear from him and ask questions.
Great, thanks, Steve. Eric, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we can't see you, but we can hear you. Are we supposed to see you?
I'm not sure. I thought you could, but I guess that's not the important part necessarily.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, uh-oh.
Yeah, we're having a bit of...
So what I kind of had in mind is I was just going to kind of give an overview of.
I wonder if he went out and came back in, if that might help.
Yeah, I don't even know. It looks like Jaboo's frozen. Eric, can you hear us?
Everybody's frozen.
Either he is the greatest stare competition I've ever. Okay.
Right.
Oh, I think we all were just frozen or something in time for a minute.
Yeah, Eric, can you hear us now? We lost you right when you were about to start talking.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I think your internet, I mean, at least on this end, is a little unstable. I don't know about, and are others having trouble hearing him, or is it just me?
It's unstable in Contoys as well.
Yeah. We can try again. Eric, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, if you want to try, we'll see how it goes. Sorry.
Okay. I was gonna briefly cover the training I had at Howard Center, more as an overview. So the first training I had was therapeutic options to client-facing staff as they start at Howard Center. It is kind of designed more for folks that work more in like an office setting or more like clinical setting, as opposed to out in the community. This training is not focused completely on de-escalation, more so on basics of communicating with clients generally, with themes around respect and politeness, understanding that clients might work better with one person as opposed to another person, sometimes for reasons beyond your control, but something that clinicians should recognize. Other kind of general topics, realizing that the interaction that you're having with a person that might be escalated, there may have been a lot of preceding events, and this interaction could be a byproduct of kind of the last straw. And then it spoke kind of generally about body language awareness, and basic safety. Things like keeping maybe a desk between yourself and a person if they're very escalated, and just awareness of like positioning and reactionary gaps. So that was kind of the first training in a nutshell. Does anyone have any questions, or can folks hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you great. Other questions? No, we're good. Thanks.
Okay. And then kind of a second training I had while I was at Howard Center. This was not a Howard Center training per se. It was arranged through the medical director at Howard Center. Had a colleague who teaches this training called The Art of De-escalation. Her name is Dr. Madeline Baranowski. And she trained just our street outreach team specifically. This training was obviously focused on de-escalation. We discussed the challenges, things like environmental considerations, or like support de-escalation is stuff to consider, and don't really have a choice. And talked about how in the context of like a responder, oftentimes it's help arriving mid-story. And also kind of the idea that there's not magic words to de-escalation, and it's not a science. It's, strategies that you can employ. Other things we've talked about in this training, avoiding setting a time or an outcome expectation when trying to de-escalate. Things like avoiding contagious anxiety, tactics for breaking a cycle of dysregulation or escalation, using things like tone, taking space from a scene, going for a walk, food, water, basic needs, things like that, which just might help someone regulate again. We talked about kind of the approach of first assessing, then connecting with an individual, communicating with them, and then once you've established rapport, only then trying to align. We talked about phrases that might be helpful. Kind of we referred to them as like tools in your toolbox. and the importance of debriefing with team members after something to hopefully,
Can we just go back to that one point that you were talking about after you were talking about taking some time away from the scene and food? I think you were talking about tools in your toolbox. Do you mind repeating what you said after that, if you recall?
Yeah, I talked about the importance of assessing a situation, making a connection with the individual, communicating with the individual, building a rapport, and only once those have been done, attempting to work toward an outcome or align resources toward an outcome. Also, we discussed phrases that work, and that was where I said that those are like tools in your toolbox, things that you can kind of keep in the back of your head and employ in different situations that might be helpful. And we talked about the importance of debriefing after an incident, talking about what worked, what didn't work, what can be improved for next time. And then finally, we talked about risk management. So things that might increase the risk of a situation, things like maybe an individual has certain substances on board, weapons, things like that. And also the importance of working as a team and not being an individual and putting yourself in an unsafe situation. So yeah, that would be the art of de-escalation training I took at Howard Center in a nutshell. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I'm wondering, Eric, how long was that training? Was that a day-long training?
The art of de-escalation was probably only 1 to 2 hours. I would say it was fairly brief.
Okay, and then
therapeutic options was the better part of the day.
Okay, and then did you do retrainings on either of those, or was it just a one-time?
No, those were one time.
Okay, and then when you said you talked about debriefing after incidents, was there training, and maybe you're going to get into this, but was there training within that context when you were debriefing?
Yeah, in the context of my work on street outreach, the way that team is structured is kind of that there's kind of constant ongoing debriefing and opportunities for feedback. So yeah, that was kind of part of the culture and the setup at street outreach even before the training. We would talk about things as a team and had that kind of environment.
Any questions at this point?
Eric, can you tell me, give me some examples of how you go about establishing rapport?
Yeah, it kind of starts with just introducing who I am, and then taking some time to try to understand the circumstance as much as possible. When it comes to that, I would say active listening. And that's again where something like trying to avoid setting a time or an expectation kind of helps. I think sometimes there's a rush to try to write a situation, but I find that if you have the time and you're afforded the opportunity to listen and act back to the person, that you understand the situation or ask clarifying questions, doing those things, typically is the first step in trying.
Can you tell us how often you use these strategies, sort of in a week or a month or a year?
Yeah, I mean, I would say use this approach every single, not necessarily in the context of an incident. I mean, the same things that apply like they apply to my general work, which largely is proactive work. But you're still talking to folks, you're still talking about concerns they have, listening to them, building rapport, and then hopefully trying to work toward an outcome, even if they're not escalated. So yeah, I would say I use these skills every day.
Eric, did you, I was surprised by the 1 to 2 hours of training. Did you think that additional training would be helpful? Do you think that was adequate?
Yeah, I think absolutely, like additional training would have been helpful. I will say, like beyond these formal trainings, like street outreach has its own approach of like, you know, shadowing and being a formal setup. So it's not like this is the only, but these were, I would say, the only formal trainings. Aside from, I took the Team 2 training as well, which is part of, I believe, Vermont Care Partners, which wasn't necessarily a Howard Center sponsored training. It's, I think, mostly utilized by law enforcement. But I took that training as well during my time at street outreach.
Eric, would you say that the critical incident debriefing is actually part of ongoing training when you think through what happened and you kind of suss it out?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You always kind of like learn from your colleagues and learn for next time.
I have another question. I'm wondering, so you're working through different de-escalation strategies. At what point do you decide they're not working and what's your next step? And I know that's a very general question and it's very contextual, but if you could talk about that, that would be helpful.
Yeah, it, like you said, it's contextual. I mean, obviously, like the safety of the individual and the folks around them and myself are all paramount. So if any of those things are compromised, you know, then I'm seeking additional support to try to maintain safety. Safe situation, but a person is still escalated. You also have to kind of look at environmental factors, middle of the street. You know, is there likely to be kind of ongoing concerns? Could their safety become a concern once I leave? Yeah, things like that. So often it's trying to get the individual to a point where maybe you can mitigate some of those other circumstances. So that's where, you know, if possible, maybe taking a walk, going to a different situation. Or a different setting, sorry. Yeah, so it's completely contextual. If I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes and no. The first part of the question is, which is what I'm interested in now, is so if you get to the point in a serious situation and you're not getting anywhere, what's the next thing that you do? Like, who do you call? Do you call more CSLs? Do you call the police? Are you with the police already? How does that all work?
Yeah, that's also contextual. So if it's like an immediate safety risk, then typically, yeah, I would call the police. If it's, you know, something, I mean, sometimes it can be something where you can employ someone's like natural supports, so family and friends, and maybe they can come over and help support the situation better than, you know, like a professional support could. Yeah, sometimes that can be calling, like first call for Chittenden County for like an assessment clinician to come out. Certainly also enlisting if they have professional supports and they've identified that. You know, maybe if they have a good rapport with their case manager, that person might be able to come out and support. So it all depends on the situation and who the person kind of has in their network that you can involve.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Eric, to be clear, you're talking about your training so far when you were as street outreach, correct? We haven't gotten to your training as a CSL, or am I mistaken?
No, you're correct. I just covered what I've done on street outreach.
Okay. Great. And did you want to talk any more about that, or do you want to tell us now about what your transition to street to CSL has been in terms of training?
Yeah, I can kind of cover my training that I've had in the few months I've been a CSL, if it's that time, if folks are ready for that. Yeah, so kind of starting out, there's a training with the community outreach supervisor, Lacey Ann Smith. This was quite brief. It was like the new CSLs and CSOs. I believe some folks from Parallel Justice attended as well. Just a brief kind of overview of having respectful interactions with the public and with each other. Having a mindfulness for hooks or things that may be upsetting to different people, or identifying our own hooks or things that might be difficult for us while having an interaction, or something that might get under your skin. Just being able to identify those in advance and recognize when that things might be going in that direction. After that training, I took the training that the chief described, focused on de-escalation. The first part of the day was actually spent kind of covering some basic safety procedures and things to look out for, be mindful of for own safety while we're working in the field. And then I believe we kind of transitioned more into the de-escalation portion of the training. This was a lot of the same themes that were covered in the art of de-escalation training that I had taken, but this was, I believe, a full day or the better part of a day. So we kind of fleshed out these themes, quite a bit more. There's a lot more interaction with the instructors. There's time for some videos of kind of officers in other departments, in escalated scenes, or just relevant scenes, and how they handled it, kind of some analysis of what worked and what didn't work. And then, like the chief described, there's some kind of acting out situations with our colleagues at the end of the day. I think one of the main kind of things that I took away from this, there's quite a bit of time spent on active listening, and this kind of behavioral change staircase, taking steps and time to build connection and listen before attempting to work toward an outcome or influence a person's behavior. There's also some time spent on self-regulation. There's time spent on kind of like conversation rules, things like, listening 80% of the time and talking 20% of the time. Understanding influences in the individual's life, which may be leading to their escalation, family factors, mental illness. Again, that kind of, you might be interacting with the person or coming in right at their kind of last straw moment, and just recognizing that, there might have been a lot of circumstances leading up to that. And then there's some discussion as well about where police resources and non-police resources like CSLs and street outreach, kind of what the roles of each might be, or I guess in establishing or an emphasis on communication between the two. Yeah, and I'll echo what the chief said as well, that this training was kind of tailored for us and is separate from what's provided to the police officers. Does anyone have any questions about that?
I don't have a question about that right now, but I'm also wondering, in terms of your previous street outreach work, did you typically see the same people over and over, or was it, regularly wider than that?
It's a mix. I mean, when you're working on street outreach, you have quite a presence in downtown Burlington, so you're gonna see the same folks over and over again. Specifically, like members of the unhoused population. A lot of that's like proactive work. When it comes to more like incident response, you do see like the same folks over and over again, but with less regularity. And there are certainly, new folks that you're interacting with as well. So it's more of a mix when it comes to the incident response side. The proactive work, you tend to have the same folks over and over again.
Thank you.
I'll also say after that training I just described, I also took a 2-day training hosted at South Burlington Police Department called Verbal De-escalation and Crisis Communication. This was a retired lieutenant from Utah who works for an organization called Legal Liability Risk Management Institute. The instructor also, I believe, is currently employed in crisis services. So this was a 2-day de-escalation training that I took just last month.
How was that training?
It was good. It was helpful. Again, a lot of the core themes are the same as what was covered in my training at BPD and also in the Art of De-escalation training. But again, 2 days spent on it, you have more time to flesh things out, just more conversation around it. So there's quite a bit of interaction with the instructor. He was kind of telling, personal anecdotes of things that he encountered over his career in crisis and in law enforcement. Again, video examples. This one did get into duty to intervene. And there's a little bit more time spent discussing specific mental illnesses and also suicidality.
Thank you. That was great. So just out of curiosity, does that mean the training sort of helped you identify what the mental illness might be and to have a de-escalation strategy commensurate with that?
I hesitate to say that just because working in the field, it's really not a spot to be trying to, understand a diagnosis in that moment. Nor is that really our role. And again, we're coming in mid-story. So we don't really have the information, I think, to make that call, nor is it really within my purview to diagnose someone. I think it's just more that they were providing this information more in the context of behaviors you might encounter versus maybe diagnoses, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Thanks.
I believe Milo has a question. Want to let her jump in?
Thank you. I had a couple of questions. So I completely understand what you're saying that you can't arrive at a particular situation and actually diagnose someone. So that is definitely very clear. I just want to know if there's do you feel that you received enough emphasis on being trauma informed, like recognizing that the way someone's behaving may be a result of trauma or a result of certain general behaviors that would indicate a possible source of mental illness. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
To make sure I'm understanding you, you're wondering if I feel that I've had sufficient training on like trauma-informed care, and being guided by an understanding of maybe some other factors in an individual's past that might be asking.
Well, being able to look at someone's behavior and their initial responses and knowing that behavior is indicating something, be it something related to trauma or mental illness in general, so that you're able to adjust your approach as quickly as possible if necessary.
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult in the moment unless it's somehow like relevant or communicated, to understand a person's history. I have taken a training at Howard Center on motivational interviewing and trauma-informed care, but having taken that training, a lot of the times in the moment of the response, I feel that you don't always have access to that information until maybe things you kind of, or at least until you've had time to build the rapport.
What would you say?
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
What would you say is the most important thing that you've learned about de-escalation?
Again, it's what's important depends on the scene that you're going to. If I had to say one thing that has been helpful, is knowing or having some existing knowledge or relationship, especially relationship with the person that you're responding to. That is absolutely, in my eyes, like the most helpful thing as I respond to something.
And then my last question is behavior that's nonverbal. We recently have been reviewing an incident where there was a physical gesture. So there wasn't an actual conversation, but it was a physical gesture that when looking at this gesture, it's interpreted in different ways by different people who are reviewing it. Is there any training around that, like not making those type of assumptions and engaging in a conversation? I'm just curious if that's brought up in any of the trainings.
So you're asking if something that's purely body language or gesture, but there was no communication, if there's been any training on how to react to those?
Exactly. Like what would be the best practice to handle something like that?
It's pretty difficult for me, not having any other knowledge around this circumstance, to really make a comment on it. So yeah, I kind of would hesitate to. It's again like so circumstantial.
What would you do in general in a situation like that where there is no immediate threat to you?
So if a person's gesturing, but it's non-threatening to me. Again, it's hard for me without knowing like more context. I would say like in my work, like as I'm going through my day, if someone's gesturing at me, and again, like I'm really having a hard time, like without more information or context. A gesture could be interpreted so many different ways.
So I guess what I'm I'm getting at is I'm just curious is if there's some specific information because as so it was something that was interpreted differently by different people that were looking at it. So if there was a conversation, you know, saying what exactly do you mean? What do you want me to do? What do you not want me to do? To determine if something's appropriate. I'm just trying to get a feeling of when something like that happens. Is there the training to say that I can't act on a physical gesture alone? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm still feeling like it's so circumstantial that I'm not really like comfortable talking about that.
Okay, so you feel there could potentially be circumstances where you would act on just a physical gesture alone? Or do you feel the training that you've received would guide you to engage in more conversation?
It totally depends on the situation. Like what is the gesture? What is the surrounding environment? You know, what maybe is like the other factors that maybe have happened leading up to that.
Okay.
So yeah, it's hard to say without a specific circumstance in mind.
Okay, thank you.
Very helpful, Eric. Thank you very much.
I'm all set.
Anyone else? Chief, did you want to add anything?
No, thank you.
Eric, thank you so much for jumping in last minute and sharing that information with us. It was really helpful, and we appreciate your time tonight.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. All right then. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Eric, for that. Moving on, we have to jump back to public. We have to jump to public forum. And with that, I can't see people who are in attendance in the auditorium. If there's anybody in attendance in the auditorium that wants to speak, now is your time. I ask you come up to the table in front of the commissioners and I'm talking to the microphone.
Here we go.
Hello, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Anna Wagling, and I'm one of Eric's colleagues and one of the.
Relax. Pull the mic close to you.
Oh, closer? Sorry. I'm Anna Wagling. I'm one of the new CSLs with Eric. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm here to observe the mission.
Great.
Thanks.
Are you a social worker?
I don't have my MSW. I worked at USCRI, the Refugee Resettlement Program, for 5 years, so lots of experience. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Yeah.
Eric, are you still here?
And I guess this is for Shannon. I'm not sure if anyone reached out to you, looking to comment today on your end. Nope.
There we go. I'm torn on whether to, so I did have somebody reach out to me. She is in attendance on Zoom as well. She asked me to relay something to y'all. And so I don't know if this is the place to do that, but oh, hold on. Let's see, Mary. There you are.
I'm comfortable in just saying something.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to say, I've spoken here a few times during the year, and so I didn't want to occupy too much of the public forum time, but I did want to mention that my family just recently, within the last couple of months, went through another crisis period, and there was certain things going on, and I became frightened, and I called the police, and the police showed up, and they actually met up with my family member out on the street and just had a conversation with him. And it turned out that the Howard Center had already gotten a court order allowing for his involuntary assessment. And so the police knew about this, that there was an involuntary order out for him. And so would have been justified in just picking him up and carrying him off to the emergency room. But instead, they saw him out on the street, met up with him, and simply had a conversation with him. And then they came to my house afterwards and let me know what had happened. Told me that they did know about the order, but that had made, the judgment at that time that he seemed contained enough within his own self to be able to allow him just to go, return to his apartment. And so I was really impressed that they had just taken the time to have a conversation with them. It sounded like, all I had was their take on it, but my take on it was listening to them was that they really did treat him with some kindness, and that they listened to him, and that they treated him with respect, and didn't take him voluntarily, but suggested that he may benefit by having a conversation with a crisis worker. And so allowing him to have that voluntary moment, then he came back to my home later that evening and said that he was ready at that point to go talk to a crisis worker. And so was able to make that decision to go voluntarily and talk to a crisis worker. And I think that also kept his relationship with the police better. Unfortunately, the way that the system is set up, the only place where there's crisis workers at that time of night is at the emergency room. And then once at the emergency room, then he became kept there involuntarily because they had the order there too, just waiting for him. But I was really impressed by the fact that the police had found a way of communicating with him in a kind and respectful way, that they listened to him, that they communicated that it would be beneficial to him to talk to a crisis worker, but also allowed him to make that decision. And so I just wanted to share that the difference between that and what it was like 10 years ago is so significant. And even just a few years ago would have been a different outcome. And so I wanted to compliment the officers. One of the officers was a female corporal who was very interested in mental health work. I got her card, but I couldn't find it. But I was just so impressed by both of those officers. They just seemed like that they were genuinely interested in having a good outcome. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Was there anybody else on your side, Shannon? That was it. Awesome, thank you. And I can't see into the gallery. Is there anybody in Contois that's looking to speak at this point?
No.
Awesome. All right, then with that, I close the public forum, move on to the chief's report. And with that, I give the floor to Chief Murad.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to talk to the commission. So we've had a lot of time since our last time together. I have several things to talk about. I do have a presentation, although we don't have to put that up quite yet. I'll talk a little bit about some things that happened over the past 2 months. We had a swearing-in ceremony on Friday, October 22nd. That included a lot of things that had been left in arrears during the past almost 2 years, really. The last time we'd done one was when Chief Morrison had still been the interim chief. We gave oaths of office to our 3 new CSLs, which includes Anna and Eric, and also Anthony Jackson Miller, a third. We gave oaths of office to 2 new community service officers, or CSOs. We gave belated oaths to Shannon and to an ID technician, Courtney, an ECS or emergency communication specialist, Cash Durham, and we promoted Lacey Smith from community liaison to our community support supervisor, which was a nice, well-deserved and belated bump for her, and I'm very glad to have been able to do that. We also administered a number of sworn oaths, and we call our officers sworn officers because literally when an officer takes an oath, it is under the pains and penalties of perjury. He or she is doing more than saying that I'm giving my personal credibility and giving an oath as other employees do, and it's certainly important. It is actually a legal oath, and it comes with certain authorities and responsibilities. We gave sworn oaths to our first probationary police officer in much more than a year, almost 2 years, who also is a former Howard Street worker, and so has a number of the same kinds of experiences that Eric just described, and is currently down in the police academy now. We made promotions to sergeant, and these too were very belated. Some of these went back to 2020. We had Sergeant Dan Delgado, Sergeant Dwayne Mellis, Sergeant Mike Henry, Sergeant Jake Seller, Sergeant Simon Bombard, and Sergeant Vincent Ross, all promoted to sergeant. And then to lieutenant, Lieutenant Mai Wynn, Lieutenant Brian Labarge, and Lieutenant Anthony Brownell, all were given sworn oaths and promotions. On November 8th, we did an awards ceremony for 2020. And so we had done in May an awards ceremony for 2019, given in May of 2021 because it had been so delayed. And that was something that normally we do at the hotel with the Queen City Police Foundation. It's a big day. This was a little smaller and more intimate, but no less important for that. That was on November 8th. We gave certificates of appreciation to Kyle Dodson and to Jennifer Morrison for being members of the community who contributed greatly to the agency in times of need. We gave certificates of recognition to Officers Byrne and Marvin, both of whom went through that Team 2 training that Eric mentioned, and is a state-level training for mental health, and had both performed exemplary in 2 different situations that rose to Team 2's notice, and Team 2 included their efforts in its newsletter. We gave a team award to the St. Joseph's Orphanage team, a number of detectives who worked to resolve or bring as close to resolution as possible that lingering wound in our community. I was really proud to be a part of that and get to be at the head when we brought our part of that to some degree of closure on behalf of those survivors. And that was a very meaningful award, I felt. They worked incredibly hard on that. That is an incredibly difficult case that was, obviously obscured by years and murky record keeping and the stories of traumatized children, now adults, and yet they found what would have amounted to probable cause had it not been for the statute of limitations. There was instances, I think, that would have risen to the level of probable cause. Obviously, that's for a prosecutor or court to determine, but we were confident in that assessment. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, the only crime at the time that was within the statute of limitations still was murder, and there was no indication that such a thing had occurred there. So that is fortunate in the sense that nothing that awful occurred, but awful things happened there. We gave a team award for 2 shootings on a rainy night in April of last year. This was in 2020. During the very early stages of the pandemic, we had 2 shooting incidents on one night, an attempted murder and then another, which turned out to be self-inflicted, but initially was reported by the victim as a black man having burst into his apartment and shot him for no reason in the leg. And officers responded to both of those. Initially, they were uncertain whether or not they were linked. It's not like we usually have 2 shootings closely temporally proximate. These were within less than an hour and a half of each other. There was rain, there was multiple responses. There were a total of 23 employees responded to that in different ways. 5 of those are gone now. We don't have the capacity to make those kinds of responses anymore. To handle 2 incidents like that would be a real challenge for us, but they did an incredible job that night, and they very quickly saw through the report of that second victim and charged him ultimately with that false report and the reckless endangerment of the self-inflicted gunshot wound. 28 employees were awarded a team award for the North Avenue homicide, which involved a full-on 3-way gunfight with multiple rounds expended in the middle of the night. There too, huge number of employees, 5 of whom are no longer with us, and not all the same 5 either. And a response that, again, would be a challenge for us to muster, but they did amazing work. And that was a stone cold whodunit. The family of the victim did not know who that had been. They did not know what had happened. There were no cameras. There was no ability to have a statement from the victim, who was already gone when officers arrived. And the detectives put that together through a lot of legwork and gumshoe and leather, and it was really great. We gave Distinguished Service Awards to Lacey, to Cole Hayes, our IT person, for the incredible work he did during the pandemic. We ran the city for about a 2-week period out of 1 North Avenue. There was an emergency operations center set up in 1 North Avenue's community room, and the whole city ran from there. Every department head would come and meet there, and Cole had to set up the entire thing for IT, put all these extra people on our VPNs, et cetera. Really, really great work. And to the SRO team, because the school resource officers, obviously we don't have school resources officers any longer, but they were an incredibly important part of our agency for a long time and did amazing work. We gave life-saving awards to Sergeant Simon Bombard and Officer Joe Congdon, both of whom saved individuals on the night of those 2 shootings. Our victim with the self-inflicted gunshot wound was bleeding out. He had hit an artery, there was blood everywhere, and his life was absolutely saved by Joe Congdon. And also to Gino Baccaglini and Billy, our canine. They tracked an elderly man in Shelburne who left in the midst of below freezing temperatures, wearing very little clothing, and disappeared, and ultimately was discovered down an embankment near a stream in more than a half mile from his home. That kind of location would have been impossible without a dog. And so Canine Billy and Gino really helped there. The Chiefs Award, which is our highest award, was offered to the department as a whole for the work that it did in an incredibly stressful year, moving from the pandemic, from frankly the challenges of bringing in a new chief and the reasons for having to bring in a new chief in the form of interim Chief Morrison, to the pandemic, to the murder of George Floyd and the protests that engendered, including outside the building, and to the stresses that defunding has brought upon the agency. And last was our coveted badge award, which goes to an external party, and we gave it to the Queen City Police Foundation for unwavering support during that incredible year, and just really important role in letting the officers know that the community was behind them. We are working on training. We have, as I promised, we have run through our juvenile training as discussed in a couple of issues in front of the Police Commission. We are now in the midst of doing fair and impartial training that adds to a long regime of training that we did with Trustee Loving in the beginning of the year, a total of 6 1.5-hour sessions with her covering a range of bias and anti-racism issues, and we are now augmenting that with a refamiliarization of our fair and impartial policy, which was adopted by the City Council in spring of 2020 and is up online, and that will qualify for our Rule 13 fair and impartial compliance, I'm hopeful. And to come, we are working to identify mental health training. Team 2 training, we'll continue to leverage that, but I am working very hard to find someone who can purvey for us or be a vendor for us for CIT training. And one potential avenue is one of our new CSLs, the one who you have not yet met, who wasn't here tonight. Anthony Jackson Miller has worked on CIT training with some other entities, and that's an avenue for us to explore. We had a holiday party the other week with the Queen City Police Foundation. Really wonderful opportunity to get away and have people be able to see each other in a context other than work. We had the incredibly difficult, but incredibly well affected and safely affected operation at Sears Lane. That is something that we had been working on and planning for a very long time. There were those who claimed that we had done it because the night before there had been some piece on a news station. Nothing could be further from the truth. You cannot put together an operation of that scope and scale and do so safely without planning and coordination between the entities involved. There was a huge amount of coordination between our CSLs, between us, between CVOEO, between DPW, and most importantly, the mayor's office on that issue. And with that, I'll launch into the report. First slide, Shannon, if you could.
Chief, do you mind if we just have a couple of questions on this before we go on, since it's a different topic? First of all, I would gladly accept your offer for de-escalation training. I don't know if maybe we could coordinate amongst the commission, but I think that would be really great for us.
Great.
I'm just curious as to whether there has been training on the new use of force policy.
Yes.
Okay, great.
That we're mandated to familiarize ourselves with it once we adopted it, but it was essentially ours. The vast majority of the statewide use of force policy was cribbed from the one that we wrote. And so it wasn't a stretch for the officers to become familiar with it.
Thank you.
I'll start off with just a picture of our head count. You see that little bump that represents new officer Meerdirks at the academy. We're flat. It'll go down again next month. Once I enter in a January 1st, 2022 number, it'll be down by at least one, because we will very, very sadly be losing Deputy Chief Sullivan, who's in the audience tonight. I'll say more about his incredible contributions later and the loss that his moving on is to the agency and to the city, but it's an incredible opportunity for him to be the chief of police in Swanton and to take over and have the top spot and be able to give that community the benefit of his great experience. So it'll go down again, and I fully anticipate that by February 1st of 2022, it'll be down at least 3 more as we lose officers to the VSP. The next police academy begins in March 2022, and hopefully we will have candidates for it, and this is why. Be a Burlington cop. And for those watching this, or for those who will see this once we post it online, we have a $15,000 hiring incentive. This is a job that offers $63,300 for its first year salary. There are incredible benefits to this job, and you can come in at a higher step as well, depending on commensurate experience or previous experience. So people from other agencies, especially out of state, I'm hopeful that this is an attractive opportunity for them. We're really working to make this something that helps us grow again as an agency and return to where we were as the preeminent police department in Vermont. Next, please. Thank you. Incidents. I put this in every single one just because, not for you all who have seen it, of course, but for those who are going to look at it online as a new document that they've never seen before, this grounds the next couple slides. Next, please. Incident volume year to date. So as you see, we are still down this year, about 10%, but I think what's interesting is that since June 1st, we've actually surpassed last year's. So that means that decrease of 10% was all in the first half of the year while the pandemic was still upon us and before the governor lifted the stay home, stay safe order. We've seen it tick up fast enough then to overcome that 10% deficit and in fact go past the previous year. We are still stacking about 15% of calls owing to the priority response plan. And again, I point out that difference, that drastic difference from June through December of 2017 versus June through December of 2021, almost half of it, 46% of that, comes merely from the diminishment of traffic stops and foot patrol, which are entirely discretionary and proactive on the part of the officer. Well, not entirely. There are some traffic stops that you simply cannot not make, the egregious driving behavior in front of you, but much of it is proactive officer behavior, and that is half of that decrease. We are not seeing decreased volume because the public needs response less. Next, please. Total incident volume, just another way to look at it. Again, it's indisputably down. This year is that bottom line. But there are, as I said, some reasons for that. And you can see on the visual how far off it was up and through about May. And then it just really started to level off and keep up with the previous year starting in June. Next, please. Thank you. This is priority 1 incidents. And again, as we've said before, priority 1 incidents are not changed at all. That diminishing drop of all overall incidents is real. It is not at all the fact for priority 1 incidents. And this year, in fact, this so far is the highest number of priority 1 incidents since 2016. Next, please. Uses of force, we are the second lowest we've been. That is a good thing. Every single use of force, as you all know, is made public now. The link is right there for anybody to be able to look and see. And I have talked today again with the city's HR department to get that redaction specialist position. It's being graded and reviewed, and I'm hopeful to be able to get that posted ASAP so that we can make body camera footage as well as the narrative reports available to the public. Next, please. Selected incidents trends. So these are trends. I think people can look this over sort of on their own at a later point. I'm not going to belabor any of these. I've broken a couple of them out in the next slides, however. This one is violent crime. So of the violent crime categories there, looking at 2021 versus 2019, and the rationale for that is that 2020 was just uniquely anomalous. We see that we have had real increases in the violent crime categories that we've been tracking since we started doing these reports for the commission. So I didn't add any or take any away. I admit that, for example, that percentage for gunfire is disingenuous owing to the incredibly low numbers that we're talking about. But I think that the number for ag assault is alarming. I think that the number for domestics, that's aggregated domestics, domestic disturbances, domestic assaults, misdemeanors, and domestic assaults felonies is also disturbing. Next slide, please.
Chief, what do you?
Sure. If you go back to the previous, thank you.
How do you account for the rise in gunfire?
So the rise in gunfire is, I think, driven by the same phenomena that are driving it across the country. We're just very fortunate in that our increase has not been accompanied by good aim. And I don't mean that to be flippant. I mean it sincerely. We had as everyone saw on the news, we had a full-on 3-way shootout at a gas station and no one was struck. That's a miracle, but that is in no way indicative of the fact that they didn't want to shoot each other. Other cities across the country are seeing this. There's hardly a big city that hasn't seen an uptick in shootings and homicides. Savannah has had some good success from 2020 to 2021, but 2019 to 2020 was terrible in Savannah, just like it was elsewhere. Chicago is awful. Los Angeles is having a tough time. New York has seen incredible percentage increases, although they were starting with very, very low bases compared to their historical highs. But the nation as a whole saw an unprecedented 5,000 homicide increase from 2019 to 2020. And it has seen and that is not merely a numerical increase, it's a percentage, it's the biggest percentage increase in recorded history. And so this phenomenon is happening elsewhere. And what's driving it? I think there's a host of factors that are driving it. I think that the pandemic is overstated as a contributor. I believe that the largest single contributor is police withdrawal. And I think that in some places that police withdrawal is predicated on actually diminishing police forces. We've seen it in some cities. And in other places, it is predicated on officers not wanting to take as much enforcement. And in some places, it is predicated on municipalities and local laws saying you can't do foot pursuits anymore. States that are saying that reasonable suspicion no longer exists as a means of actually making a street encounter. We have seen changes in prosecutorial agendas and habits, and all of these together combined with the pandemic as well, and the desperation that came from that, once in 100 years global, event to create this. But the crime rise that America is seeing is not being seen anywhere else. And the pandemic was global. Now, a component of that also is the availability of guns in this country, and the fact that there are a huge number of guns in play, and that gun crime is much more pronounced here than in other places. But nevertheless, there are a host of factors that are involved. And here in our community, I do think that diminished police presence played a role. I think that there are also waves of this kind of behavior that sort of just happen. I think there are dozens or hundreds of academic papers to be written in the coming years about group psychology and zeitgeist and how those things actually affect these kinds of waves. But it's definitely indisputably real. So what I did here to avoid, for instance, that huge, percentage increase with gunfire, although I actually dropped gunfire out of this because I didn't think it was realistic or fair, is I took a 5-year average from 2016 through 2020 and compared it to 21. And the numbers don't change all that much. Aggravated assault is a little bit less pronounced, it's actually more pronounced. A simple assault is down, whereas when you compare 2019 to 2021, it was up a little bit. Burglary is still up, but this is just a way to see it against a wider, longer trend, and I thought it was a somewhat an additional piece of information to present these crime trends, or incident trends, rather. Traffic disparities. I've talked a lot about traffic on this, and I am very happy that as we close the year out, and we're really at 93%, 94% of the year done, there's not a heck of a lot of year left, we are as low as we have been. On previous slides, what you'll see is that our crashes with injury and fatality have not changed all that much. They certainly haven't gone up. Our traffic stops have, and in the process, we have eliminated disparity in our traffic stop. And in 2021, that is the case. I'm not misspeaking on that. That's where we are at.
If I may just
yes.
comment on that, Chief. I was looking at the data online, and actually over 5% of stops have missing race. And so it makes it very hard to make that a solid claim that racial disparities have disappeared. I was actually concerned about the missing data. BPD had done a good job of eliminating missing race data in the past, but as I said, it jumped to 5%, which, given the racial percentages in the community, can really lead to a distorted perception on how we're doing in terms of racial disparities.
So we'll absolutely make sure to clear that up by the time of the annual report. That's what the annual report with the longer analysis period is for. But some of those stops that are captured by the online system are being reevaluated because they're not stops. There are a number of things that the online system grabs that aren't. Are they statistically significant? I'm not certain about that yet. But what I'm running here is what is recorded in Valcor as a traffic stop, and there is no racial data missing from these, to my knowledge. I had it run by the city's analyst, and that was not flagged as an issue for it. And I'm confident that this is basically what we're going to see. So obviously we will see what the annual report says and be able to dig in more deeply for it there. But I think this is good news, and I think this is something that is worth is worth taking a moment to say, okay, that is some degree of progress on something that has had bigger issues in the past. Next, please.
Stop for a second.
Sure.
And just highlight the fact I think it's a really good thing that we ask questions that are detailed questions and important ones.
Sure.
And we had good responses. So thank you on both sides.
This is a slide about the FBI NIBRS data. So BPD does contribute NIBRS data. It has for quite some time. I think Vermont overall is a state that is incredibly compliant. There are only, of the approximately 18,000 agencies in the country, there are about just under 10,000 that contribute NIBRS data. NIBRS is I frankly don't remember the exact acronym and what it stands for. I don't know if DC Sullivan does, but it is a successor to the UCR, which is the Uniform Crime Report. It's a much wider set of data. It's not easy to comply with. Smaller agencies, it's a burden for a smaller agency to have to comply with this data. We obviously have record keepers and dedicated analysts that can do that. Other places don't. But these are the data there. This is really straight from the FBI page, and I included it for commissioners to look at their leisure. Next, please. This was something that, National Incident-Based Reporting System, Chief Sullivan believes. This is something from that was asked of me by another requester, and I thought it would be interesting for the commission to see our education levels for the department. Of our 69 current sworn officers, and we have 69 actual, I have 3 on long-term military, 1 on long-term injury, and 1 at the police academy, so we are 64 effective. But of the 69 sworn, 61% have bachelor's degrees or higher, 13% have advanced degrees, 8 have master's degrees. Our deputy chief of administration over there has a JD, so we'll have to scratch that one soon. 19 officers have associate's degrees, and 14 officers have no degree, although the majority of those have military service in lieu of a degree. And for comparison, I ran a very long longitudinal study of a 22,500 person cohort of the New York City Police Department back in 2012, and 33% of that agency had a bachelor's degree or higher. So this is, I think it puts us in a good place. I think it's certainly something we want to continue to look at and work on. It's not a requirement to have a bachelor's degree for the department. I think that making it a requirement can be limiting, especially as we try to seek a wider pool of candidates. But I do think that it's important to see this. Next slide, please. Demographics, I think I've showed this before. If I have, forgive me. It puts the city versus the department, the total department hires since 1996, the current department's makeup of people who are currently employed by the department in the sworn officer position, and then the city's position and those rates. And next.
Can I?
Yes,
sorry,
of course, of course.
So the black percentage is off. It earlier was around 5 or 6%. Just to let you know that the U.S. Census data is out now, and so for Burlington, the black share is over 7%. I'm happy to ship those data to you. We're just using it for something else, and I'm happy to ship that to you. I'm not sure about the Asian and Hispanic, but I can get
those. Aren't in the census
They
data?
are. Yeah, I just
didn't get those?
Don't recall those numbers,
Okay.
but I'm happy to send them to you.
Great.
Can you send these to us?
Yes, absolutely. They'll be
It'd
sent
be
to
helpful to have them if it's at all possible before, so we can be thinking about them to ask good questions.
I usually finish them like right before I get
That's
over
what I
here.
figured.
It is posted on board docs.
Yeah, they're always posted as soon as the session is over. And that's it. And I thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. I thought this was really helpful and really accessible for everybody, I think. I just had a couple of questions, and they don't relate to the data. My apologies. So we had discussed the BPD having training on the role of civilian oversight boards, and I wondered if you'd had the opportunity to contact Nicole to set that up.
No, I have not done that.
And do you need any information from us to connect?
No, I have connections to Nicole.
So are you planning on doing that?
I will try to find time to do that, yeah.
Okay. And also, I don't know if you wanted to, the resolution.
Yeah, I'm wondering which resolution are we talking about?
The hiring.
I'm wondering, we had a resolution that talked about trying to reach out to different, smaller groups in the community, particularly, the African-American community, but beyond that. And I'm wondering if you haven't done anything with that.
With regard to hiring specifically?
Yeah. Let me back up a little.
Sure.
Not just hiring, but sort of seeding the community as this is a possibility for you, even if it's not today, but sort of going out into the community in various ways and talking to the leadership of various communities and offering this, and then, you know, sort of building up the capacity?
Sure. So that is absolutely a part of HR's routine outreach with regard to new positions. They send it out. They have a long list of entities, including entities like that in the community, to whom they send the materials and with whom they work. And so some of that is done at the HR level when a job is posted. Some of that is done by us. I have sent job descriptions in the past to different groups like that, particularly when we were seeking both CSOs, when we were seeking Beach and Parkers, and now that we're seeking officers again, I frankly haven't had a lot of chance to do that. I've been hiring officers for about a little less than a month and a half now. So during my tenure as chief, there was no hiring. But I have spoken with different members of the community who represent different ethnic and racial groups about hiring and about trying to seek their assistance in getting new pools of candidates. And that's absolutely something that the city does under Director Durfee.
I just think it would be really helpful if, when you can squeeze out a little bit of time, to maybe invite leaders from all those different groups to a meeting with you, and really kind of talk to people and show them some of the possibilities.
Yeah.
And ask them specifically, you know, to sort of talk to people they know in the community who might be good candidates. It'd be better coming from them in a way.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. I think that is the nature of the HR outreach, is that it goes to the groups and the leaders of the groups, and rather than trying to reach individuals.
I think it would be helpful for you to have some relationship with the different leaders of those communities if you can squeeze out the time.
Right. I do have those relationships, and I have met with a number of those individuals one-on-one or at different times, but the idea of a group meeting has appeal.
All right. Any further questions for the chief?
No question or comment. I loved all the commendations and taking the time to appreciate and recognize individuals in the department. I think that was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see Mila with her hand raised. Mila, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I had just a couple of comments. If it is a possibility in the future to have the chief's report added to board docs, like at least the Friday before scheduled meetings, that would be awesome. It would give us an opportunity to take a look at it and have questions prepared if we need to have those questions answered. And so I do, regarding the issues around the improvements around the data and traffic stops, I do acknowledge that. So I want to make that clear. But at the same time, I often have concerns around the how can I put it? Like all the focus being on the traffic stops being reduced doesn't necessarily solve, well, not necessarily, it doesn't solve other issues of bias that need to be addressed. So I still think that we need a strategic plan. We need more details about the training, more details about upcoming training, because I personally have been very curious about this and have never really felt that I've gotten adequate information. And I've been in some interesting situations lately where really culturally insensitive things were just, stated in my presence or directed toward me in a very casual way, and it makes me think, like, wow, what training is going on? Like, how effective is it? And we had a speaker recently who talked about the need to change certain types of bias training because of the realization that it's not really effective. So I hope that we really do at some point um, deep dive that and really look at it in a meaningful way that I feel has really not quite happened. And then the other thing I wanted to do quickly is I wanted to acknowledge Deputy Chief Sullivan and his service to the department. I know that we haven't always agreed on things, but I have always appreciated your demeanor and your ability to have conversations about things that at times can be very emotional, but that you keep a level head and you present information in a way that's very respectful, and I've always appreciated that. Thank you. And good luck.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Any further questions or comments for the chief?
No. Oh, I'm sorry. You said 4. I apologize, Mr. Chair.
Quite all right. Milo, is your hand still raised from before? Or do you have another question or comment?
Oops, sorry. Nope, I'm done. I'll lower it.
All right, cool. My apologies. Just double checking. All right then. I will close that agenda item and we shall jump to agenda item 5.02, which is a CNA report discussion. I'll kick this one off. This was going to be I think this is going to be it was going to be a lengthier discussion, but I feel like the joint committee meeting we had last week Tuesday kind of put some more clarity on how this is going to plan out moving forward. And I guess everyone that's in attendance to this meeting right now was at that meeting, so I won't go over verbatim what Councilor Paul told us, but basically, some of the people in the audience listening in, there's going to be a review committee to go over the recommendations that were listed in the CNA report. And the goal is to look over sections 1 through 4 over the first 4 Tuesdays in January. So that'll be January 4th, 11th, 18th, and 25th. Times the meeting will be from 5:15 to 7:30, and the makeup of this committee will be the Public Safety Committee, 2 commissioners, a commissioner from the Marketplace Commission, I believe maybe a fire commissioner, and 1 member of the, or sorry, 1 to 2 members of the community. I believe Racial Justice Alliance and another member from a not named group as of yet. If I remember correctly from that meeting, I believe Milo volunteered. I don't know if that still stands, and I was looking to hopefully see if we could get another volunteer that could join that committee. It will be a time-consuming committee. In addition to those 2 hours per week for the meeting, it will require about an hour to 2 of homework, for lack of a better word, just so you're fully prepared and can jump right in with whichever section is being dealt with for that meeting. So yeah, I guess, are there any questions regarding this committee that anyone would like to ask me about at this point in time? I can't see hands, so just get close to the microphone and start talking. Thank you.
So the committee is going to go through piece by piece the entire report? And
I'll pull up her actual language. The meetings for January will be dealing with sections 1 through 4, and then I believe section. Sorry, let me find the email here. Here it is. Oh, sorry. My apologies. Yeah, so sections 1 through 4 will be dealt with in January, and then they'll continue with sections 5 through 9 for the deadline for completing the review, which I think that's in early spring. I believe the important part is get there 1 through 4, and then 5 through 9. I believe is not quite as in depth as section 1 through 4, and so I believe that will be worked on in the months following that for the deadline in early spring. Does that answer that question? I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you.
All right, Mila, I see your hand raised. The floor is yours.
Yes, I just wanted to offer a few details. So, the general goal is in reviewing these sections and prioritizing them and coming up with action plans. So looking at these sections, looking at what the recommendations are, and then coming up with a plan to enact these recommendations. And part of that is determining who would be responsible for enacting particular recommendations, establishing timelines, and things like that.
Thank you for that. I'm not always the most articulate, so I appreciate that clarification.
I'm still new.
So,
I'm a little confused right now.
About what?
I'm confused about, is this going to be done hand in hand with the police department at BPD? Or is this a separate thing, or I'm confused?
Sure. So, if I may, I'm sorry, Chairman, I didn't mean to.
No, jump right in. I'm looking over the email, so jump right in.
Yeah. So essentially, the last meeting was the last meeting of the joint committee, which was previously the police commission and the public safety committee, the city council's public safety committee. So there's going to be a new committee which will have representation from the police department, representation from our commission, representation from the business community, and some other areas. And I'm not sure if all those details were included in the email, but they were looking for 2 volunteers from the commission. And as the chairman said, I volunteered for one of the positions.
Mr. Chair.
Sorry, I couldn't see you. Yes, jump right in.
So the department's been working on this for quite some time, basically since the report came out, and we have a matrix that actually breaks down all of the recommendations into who would do them, the recommendation about whether or not there is concurrence or partial concurrence or disagreement or non-applicability with the given recommendation, whether the recommendation's already been accomplished, and then a sense of prioritization of the recommendations that are agreed to, including whether they could be done as a quick win, whether they are priority 1 or a 2 or a 3 for implementation, and the ways in which each of them interacts with the others.
Thank you. So like, I guess moving forward, I don't need any volunteers this very second. If someone would like to, I guess if people want to mull this over, just as a commitment, and get back to me by, let's say, end of Thursday, end of the business day on Thursday, whether anyone wants to sign up for this. I'm going to share this information with Kevin and you all as well, since they're not here. So I'll give them some time to think this over as well. So I guess for that being said, yeah, no one get back to me just a second if you want, unless you really want to jump on this and do this. Don't get back to me right now. I'm going to talk to Kevin and you all as well. And then if people could get back to me by the end of the business day on Thursday, so I can then let Councilor Paul know who will be representing us.
Chair Gamache.
And
Can I
Yes, jump.
on the chief's
Please do.
I think it's good to know that the department is already working on this and that this should be communicated to Zariah Hightower, who is basically chairing this committee, as I understand it. Because I think we don't want to duplicate efforts. So I think one of us, maybe you, Jabu, could communicate with Karen and Zariah that the police department is working on this as well, and find some way to share that information.
I'll do that. Thank you.
Chair Gamache, I would add a friendly amendment, which is that they're well down the garden path with this already. And that would be a date
Thank you.
for discussion.
I think it also would be helpful for the chief, perhaps at the next meeting, to share with us what you've come up with.
The parts that are extant are with the mayor, so I'll have to speak with him about that and where we are on that.
Yep.
And then, yes, I'd be more than willing to with his approval.
Great.
Any further questions or comments with regards to the CNA report moving forward?
I think it's going to be important for the new committee. Appreciate what the chief is relaying. I think this really needs to be as transparent as possible with the community, especially given certain parts of the report that are most concerning to the community. So I think the new committee will help to do that as well, and to make sure that the priorities of the community's view of public safety are kind of are in line, right? We're not overlooking or ignoring a specific community concerns, even if it's inadvertent. So having a sense of the work that's already been done will be important, but we want to make sure that something's not being pushed to the side. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments with regards to this agenda item? Not seeing any pixelated hands, so close that agenda item and move on to the use of force reports. I hope people had time to review these force reports for October and November. I believe now's the time to ask any questions regarding, or any allowable questions at this point in time, or any requests to see certain videos at a later date.
I'm all set.
I am also all set.
Yeah, all set. Thank you.
Not hearing anything. So moving on to agenda item 7, which is commendations. And with that, I'll give the floor over to Shannon.
It's gonna I have to bounce between screens, so you'll have to give me a minute while I kind of switch between back and forth. Lacey Ann Smith had sent a commendation from someone that she took a message from, stating that she was impressed and grateful for the assistance that the police department provided to a group of them. And she spoke specifically to Sergeant Ross and Sergeant Mellis, and saying that they went above and beyond and provided some cruisers to keep a few of them warm. And she expressed her gratitude on that. I had received an email directly from someone on Officer Ye's performance on a scene, with his professional demeanor and his empathy with this gentleman's frustration and anger from being involved in a hit and run incident. And Officer Ye kept communication open over the next several weeks, kept in touch with this gentleman, and he states he persisted and went above and beyond, and he was thankful for that. Also have accommodation for 2 officers on their exemplary conduct. On an evening, it seems a man was attempting to get out of the state back to Ohio, and he had no GPS and nothing. So the officers got the address and printed out directions and gave him the directions. And they were able to make contact with this gentleman's daughter, who they all then came up a plan with to locate the male, get him a hotel for the evening, and the daughter flew out to meet her father. And so they were expressing their thanks for that, going above and beyond as well. And I'm just taking a final scan through here since it's been two.
So that was an elderly gentleman who had made it all the way here from Ohio. He attempted to cross the border a couple different times into Canada, was rejected, but could not be held by them. When he encountered officers here, they at first thought that he was just trying to seek assistance with his GPS and sort of said, yeah, well, you do it this way. And then there were some real irregularities with his behavior, and they said there's something different and wrong here, and they were able to quickly ascertain that it was more than just I need some help trying to get on the road again, to ground him and the vehicle, to get him a hotel room, to work with his daughter, who I believe was North Dakota. Is that right, Shannon? I think she was in the Dakotas.
Yes.
Had to fly here, just at the last minute and arrive. That was, I think, really great work by those officers to see what was in front of them, to think outside the box, and then to take the necessary steps to prevent someone who knows where he would or would not have gone had he just moved on. And they wouldn't have been wrong to say, well, person asked me for assistance, I gave him the assistance, here's how you program your GPS, be on your way, thanks, have a great night, sir, and off he went. And they did more than that. It was good work.
And that's all.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Up next is Commissioner updates and comments. And I will start this one off. First and foremost, I want to say thank you and good luck to DC Sullivan. I just found out now that you're leaving, and I'm surely going to miss you and communicating and working with you on this commission. And while it's very much our loss, it's Swan's gain. So good luck and Godspeed, and you'll be missed. Thank you. And my next thing I wanted to bring up, I didn't put this on the this came up earlier on today, so that's why it was not on the agenda. But I do, moving forward, want to kind of more formalize us looking at the department directives and updating them as need be. I think it would be a good idea for us to form a subcommittee that looks into doing this, and just so we can kind of stay on track and get some of these things done. I was talking to Stephanie about this a little bit earlier on today, and I think she could probably articulate it much better than I can. So I don't know if Stephanie, you want to jump in and kind of finish off what I started.
Okay, and I'll ask Shireen to jump in as well. So some of this is based on a consultation with NACOL about what's a good process to use in revising policies. And so the suggestion was to create a subcommittee that included members of the police commission, not the entire police commission, but some that had interest or expertise, a member of the police department, and agencies or entities that had the appropriate skills. One of the issues that has come up a lot is around the mental health directives, so that seemed to be a good place to start. And so we might invite, whether it's the Howard Center or whoever is the commissioners on this can identify who those people are. NACOL did sort of outline for us, and again, I invite Shireen to fill in if I've missed anything, that these should be public meetings, and that the public should be invited to give input so that the policy revision really reflects stakeholder input, so that we have a final product that really represents the sort of expertise and experience of a wide variety of the community. Shireen, did I?
Yeah, I think that is right. My impression was that the public input would come after there is a draft policy and a forum, right? Correct. That the working group would be smaller, but that the public would absolutely be invited to the table when there's a draft to present. Yeah, we had a really helpful meeting with NACOL on this. It was extremely helpful to outline for us how one would go about starting on these policies.
And hopefully we recorded this for the rest of the commissioners. So hopefully the commissioners that weren't able to attend can look at it, at least the first half of it. Shouldn't take you long, about a half hour, but Cami is really informative, and she shared a lot about other Civilian Oversight Board approaches to these issues. So that's been very helpful.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. So I guess moving forward then, also a conversation I'd like to have with Kevin and you all who aren't here about that with forming this. I guess how would be the best way for us to go about doing this then? I'm thinking just we all know about this here. I'll talk to Kevin and you all, bring up to speed with this, and then hopefully take some volunteers. And if not, I will be more than happy to assign it to people, but hopefully we can get some volunteers for this. I guess timeline for assembling this. I think we could. I don't see any issues with having this figure out to make with this committee by our next meeting, and then kind of jumping into it from there. I'm happy to hear people's thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'd want to hear from the chief as well, since the chief would be, we would be wanting department input on this committee. So
very true. My apologies.
So we would want, if you want to think about who that would, whether it's you or whether you would be assigning someone, we'd need to coordinate with them what the meeting would look like.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. And I think ultimately it would probably be, it would probably rotate. It would be different supervisors with different expertise or areas of knowledge depending on the directive at hand.
Yeah, so it seems like probably a January, the committee, the base committee could be formed by January, and then the first meeting could be mapping out what policies. I don't think it's realistic to take on too much. I think it would have to be policy by policy, in my opinion, unless there are two policies that, might have juveniles in common or something where expertise would help.
Just to
So
note,
I thought that what we were going to do would be start with mental health.
Mm-hmm. Right, okay. Yep. Yeah.
We've already started with 2.
Right, you're working.
Right. But I stopped working until after the NACOL thing.
Right, okay.
But one thing I did, so just so you know, because I'm in the social work department, I have a lot of connections in the disability community. And also underneath that is, people with diminished capacities. So I've been talking to people in the community about it. Nowhere near even close to being done. But I solicited people from various of the organizations that serve these populations. That's where we are with that. But we can start with mental health. This one is kind of on hold for a little bit.
I mean, I personally think it would be important for us to set a timeline, and I would say that by the end of February, we should have completed a draft policy for the commission to consider.
Okay.
there are overlaps between what the CNA report recommends and its recommendations and a number of different directives, and you should probably take that into account.
Right.
And also the addition of the non-police personnel that you've hired, that also shapes things in a slightly different way.
Yes, that is correct. It certainly adds to different things that you'd add into a directive, but the directives don't apply to the non-sworn employees in the same way. Rules do. Rules apply to all employees, but directives don't necessarily. They're certainly there as guides, but they're primarily for the sworn officers. So the way in which you would make mention, for example, of the CSLs as a new position would be to include how their role interacts with that of the officer in the directive. The directive wouldn't give the CSLs instruction or procedural guideline. It would give the officer procedural guideline for how, in perfect scenarios, the interaction with the CSL works.
As you're talking, in my head, I'm seeing a flow chart that would help inform us in a sort of a succinct way.
Sure.
So, Chair Gamache, I think perhaps what we could do is see if Commissioners Hart and Comerford would be willing to take the lead on this and aim for finishing by the end of February. Things don't always work out that way, but I think having a goal in mind really helps kind of keep us on task. I just spoke to Commissioner Hart. I think she will agree, and Commissioner Comerford to lead that effort on the mental health directives.
Is Commissioner Seguino going to be on the team too?
I think, having two leaders is enough, but I certainly will be joining the meetings and doing what I can to support you all. But I think just having leaders on the commission would be, the committee would be great.
Thank you.
That sounds great to me. If Hart and Comerford are on board with that, then I'm completely okay with that.
Yes.
Okay.
All right then. Thank you for that. Still commissioner comments and updates. If any commissioners have any other comments or updates they want to give, now is the time.
One thing that has been in my mind since the day that I started as a commissioner is a succession plan and a real clarity in terms of where we're going as a commission, given all the changes that are going to be happening and already happening. I think this is a really critical transition period for the commission to be more independent, and I think it's going to need, beyond May and June, another year to sort of get us solidified. So I just want to put that on the radar because I think it's very important. I'm also cognizant of the fact that it's important for us to bring in some of the new people to some of the things we're doing so that they can also carry them on, beyond those of you who've been around for a while and have done an exceptional job, she said politely.
So thank you.
We need to keep you all forever, but
Awesome. Thank you. Any other commissioner comments or updates?
None.
I think we're good.
Sorry, was that a none or a some?
A none.
None. Okay, sorry. All right then. That moves on to next meeting agenda items. And I guess to riff on what Susie was just talking about, a succession plan, I think is actually a great thing to come up with. I did start on a communications protocol, and I think that ties in with the succession plan, and I will be ready to talk about that at our next meeting. So I have that for an agenda item. But I guess more importantly, before we even write the agenda, our next meeting date was supposed to be on the 25th. That is going to coincide with one of the CNA committee meetings. So I guess what days in January look good? Because all the Tuesdays are off the book right now. So I'm not sure if Mondays or Wednesdays are better for people for next month. Is the 24th and 26th? Would that be? Is that okay on people's calendars?
For
I
me,
cannot do Wednesdays.
I'm sorry.
I cannot do Wednesdays. I have class.
Cannot do Wednesdays. Wednesdays are off the book.
Monday, the 24th works for me fine. I don't know. I can go on either day. January is pretty good.
24th is okay with me. And we know there's, do you have the city council schedule in front of you?
I do not. I'm assuming they probably. Wait. When is?
Could I just jump in?
Yes, please.
When we talked about this at the joint committee meeting, there was a discussion that they would start that meeting earlier and we would start just a little bit later. So one possibility is that we keep it for the 25th of January, but start at 6:30. I believe that's what they said is they'd work from 5:15 to 6:30.
No, no. In the email I got, they were saying that they want the meetings to be from 5:15 to 7:30. So that's the only reason why I was questioning that, because I got the email I got was after the joint committee meeting, so I'm not sure if that changed at all. I can reach back out to them and get clarity on that. But it seemed like even if they did start early, like earlier than that, I mean, I'm happy to start at 6:30. Don't get me wrong. It just seemed like it might be kind of tight, and I'm just kind of visualizing how those meetings are probably going to go. I don't see how they could shorten the meeting as opposed to, it might be tough to shorten the meeting.
I mean, I heard 6:30, I could have misheard, but one possibility is that we start our meeting from 7 to 9, and because we're not going to have executive session on the same night as the regular meetings going forward, 7 to 9 might work if 5:15 to 7 works for them. Because I think we're going to run into the city council on Monday night and losing a commissioner on Wednesday night.
Mm-hmm. I hear that. All right then. I guess we won't choose a hard date right now for that meeting. I will reach back out to public safety and try to pinpoint a date for all of us to meet then in the next couple of days. Does that work for everybody?
Yes, thank you.
All right. No, thank you. All right. And then I guess back to agenda items. So I have a succession planning communication protocol that I will have finished for next meeting. Anything else that's jumping out to people right now?
Do you happen to have our calendar that you had created for us, Lucy?
Yes, one component will be an educational component. I think we still need to decide on who that will be, and if folks have suggestions, they could send it to me or Susie. But there will be an educational component in January as well. Are you looking for the work plan?
Yes.
I'm looking, but
I have it.
You have it right there?
Yeah.
Okay.
You might have stopped at this number.
We have a whole list of things we could do. I'm wondering, about ACLU as a possible option.
Or is there anything that ties in with the policy we'll be working on?
I'm sure they have something to say about it, but I can't pin it down.
Right. Okay.
We didn't go as far as January, so.
Right, I know. Okay. So maybe if several of us, talk through email, we can sort of present something at the next meeting that takes us through till June in a preliminary. How does that sound?
Oh, sounds great to me. We're playing through June. Yeah, that's great.
And maybe what we could do is line it up with some of the things that we're working on, for instance, the mental health piece. And while I'm on the mental health piece, what happened to the mental health resolution? Does anybody know?
Bless you, Chief.
I'm sorry.
My understanding is that the mayor's office has someone who is working on putting that together, but I haven't heard any more details about when that would be.
Chairman Gamache, I'm wondering if you could connect with the mayor and ask what's happening with the mental health resolution and when they plan to bring people together so we can get an update on that. In your
Make a note of that right. I'm making note of that right now.
Thank you.
I think our agenda will want an update from the committee, the CNA committee, right? From Milo or whoever is attending that. By then they'll have met 3 times. It would be great to have an agenda item with an update.
That sounds good.
Thank you.
Noting that down as well.
And maybe a standing agenda item on reviewing policy. And the first one would be mental health. So see what we've got by the end of January, since we're supposed to get this done quickly, which is not going to be as quick as I think we hope, but we'll try.
All right. Succession planning communication protocol, educational component, work plan through June, CNA committee update, and policy update. All right. It's a pretty healthy agenda. I think we can cap it at that right now. And all right then. Sorry. Trying to find a note. So I can't find my note that I used to enter executive session. So Haley, could you help me with that? Sorry.
Yes, absolutely. So I would suggest that the chair entertain a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to 1 VSA A4 to discuss disciplinary action against a public officer or employee.
Awesome. Thank you. With that, I make a motion to enter executive session pursuant to 1 VSA A4 to discuss disciplinary actions over a city employee. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second
by Susie. Any discussion?
Yeah, this is silly, but just for the minutes, I think you want 1 VSA 317A4, right, Haley?
It's actually 1 VSA 313.
313.
A4.
Okay, you're just
Oh, I'm sorry. 1 VSA 313 A4. My apologies.
just for the minutes. Yeah, no discussion.
Quite all right. No discussion. All right. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. It's 8:09. For people that are in-house, let's reconvene at 8:20 so everyone can use the bathroom, all that jazz. And yeah, that's it. Sorry. Shannon.
You have a laptop there to is that what we're doing? Someone has a laptop with them, or
No, I think it's probably going to have to be on. I don't know if your laptops will work for it, but I think it's probably going to have to be on cell phone. I don't know that those laptops connect downstairs, do they? They haven't in the past.
No.
I've always been able to get city internet downstairs, but
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
we might be
okay, as long as
the big screen TV down there. If that's a big if. I can try. My technological knowledge of that thing is limited, but I'm willing to give it a college try if someone has the link available.
Chanel definitely got it working, so unfortunately she's not around, but definitely saw her getting it working on Tuesday. So if I wasn't quarantining, I'd be down there to help you out with that. My apologies. I'll be back in action on Monday.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
It's pretty simple when you know how to do it.
Right.
Yeah. All right then. Well, it's all right. So yeah, it's 8:10. So yeah, let's reconvene in 10 minutes for executive session. Everybody that's in the public, thank you for joining us. We don't have a time certain for our next meeting, but we will post it out once we have that settled upon. And everybody, thank you so much. And we'll catch you next time. Bye.